Hi everybody, today we are talking Gen Z. We do love talking about this topic, of course, given that Not Going to Uni is very much in this space. We're particularly passionate about talking to people who are equally passionate about Gen Z as us. Now, for this episode, we're going to dive a bit beyond just statistics. And yes, we know that actually a significant percentage of the workforce will be Gen Z come next year, but we're going to do a bit more on that. I think really digging into really what it means to make sure Gen Z talent are engaged, what makes them tick. And we've got just the person to do it with us today. And that is Josh. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. Hey, Chris. Hey, Connor. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Connor, look, those people who, God forbid, don't know you, give us a quick intro about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Conor Cotton. I'm the managing director here at Not Going to Uni, and a passionate advocate for Gen Z getting into the workforce and helping them find the right pathways for them when they finish in education.
Josh, give us a bit of an intro about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Josh Drean. I am co-founder of the Work3 Institute. We are an advisory that helps match emerging technologies with workforce strategies. So we're very much in the HR space, in the IT space. We're trying to figure out how to make work better for this emerging generation. So it kind of fits perfectly. I'm also co-author of the forthcoming book, Employment is Dead: How Disruptive Technologies Are Changing the Way We Work, co-authored with Deborah Piscione. She's incredible. We love the work that we did. It's being published with Harvard. Like I said, it's going to be here January of 28th of next year, so we still got a little bit of a wait, but really excited to share some of those insights maybe today on the pod.
Good stuff. I'll tell you what, let's go straight into it then. What's kind of, for you, what are the key kind of insights that you've gleaned that when you're talking to employers, organizations about taking Gen Z and engaging Gen Z seriously, what do you say to them?
Yeah, well, the title of our book is Employment is Dead, and I think that is a very broad and bold statement to make. And the reason why we believe it fully is because of the lack of engagement with the younger generation. We believe that traditional work models are not evolving as quickly as they need to as we look at these technologies, whether it's Web3 technologies like blockchain, AI, working for a DAO. There are plenty of ways that the younger generation is finding ways to work. And so when we sit comfortably in our corporate 9 to 5 and we see a younger generation struggling to connect, I think a lot of times the ambition or the thought is, well, maybe they're just lazy, or maybe they just haven't been taught to be disrespectful. We talk a lot about they're not able to make eye contact. And so I think it's easy to look at the negatives there potentially, but the reason why we believe that employment is dead is mainly because it's not that they're lazy in any way. It's that they are choosing careers outside of your traditional structure. And it's working for them. They're becoming influencers. They're becoming freelancers. A lot of them are actually leaving work completely to pursue their passions. And so I think it's first and foremost super important to just listen to their experience and find out what they're thinking and what they're feeling in order to help them. And that's the basis of employee engagement, right? The idea is that we try to understand how they experience the work that they are doing on a day-to-day basis at the organization and try to design an experience that works for them, that gives them all of the resources that they need. And it's not just about work, it's about work-life balance. What are the resources they're lacking at home that we can help make up for at the workplace? And so you start to see the excitement around work fall by the waysides when we return to the office. We say, you have to do work this specific way, and it's the only way to do it. And they're like, well, actually, we've proven that that's not true, and we want to work in these ways. And when push comes to shove and these executives are prioritizing shareholder experience over employee experience, that's fine. That's okay. You do what you got to do today to survive. But just know that this younger generation is taking notes. And they're not going to comply like millennials did. They are going to fight back and find other options, to the point where you wonder where all the top talent went. Well, they're either working as in the metaverse, or they're working for several DAOs at the same time, or they're freelancing and doing their own thing. So I think with all of the emerging options, it's more important than ever that we understand this younger generation.
And look, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, you drop some really great nuggets regularly, and it's great to hear the examples of bad practices of Gen Z employee experiences. So let's talk a bit about that. I think some of the bad practices that you've typically seen when you've been doing your research for the book, but also from what you've seen out there, and when you're like creating the content that you are about shining a light on Gen Z.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I think it's important to obviously look at the stats, right? There's a lot of work companies like Gallup and Forrester who are putting out a lot of stats around Gen Z and how engaged they are at in the workforce. And it's important first and foremost to do those basic things, right? When you look at it, disengagement is the lowest engagement is the lowest it's ever been in 11 years. According to Gallup, that just launched, a couple weeks ago, the younger generation is more disengaged. When you look at the disparity between, say, Boomer workers and Gen X workers versus younger millennials, older Gen Z, you start to see that they are much more disengaged than others. And just look at the stats on happiness in America, happiness in the global workforce. It's at an all-time low. I mean, just today we saw stats that said that 8 in 10 employees are at risk of burnout this year, which is more than the pandemic, just to put it in perspective. And so when leaders are trying to figure out, how do I fix this? Or for our specific organization, what can I do? We look at maybe some of the traditional things like, let's do an employee engagement survey, or let's get a ping pong table, let's get snacks in the break room, let's do whatever we can to make this a great experience. But we didn't even ask employees if that's what they want. You have to be listening to them. You have to know what they're thinking and what they're wanting. And you don't have to do an employee engagement survey to figure it out. Honestly, just open up TikTok. Spend some time looking at what people are saying about their jobs and about work, and you will get a very clear picture of what they're experiencing. And it's not that they need a ping pong table, it's that they don't have enough money to survive, whether it's the price of rent, whether it's not being paid enough at work. There are a lot of reasons why. And so I think getting a pulse on employee engagement comes from multi-different facets. My personal way of doing that, like you mentioned, Chris, is taking those viral TikTok videos and bringing them to people leaders and saying, this is what they're saying, this is what they're experiencing. If you are thinking about quiet promoting your employee, which is giving them a promotion without pay, they're not going to take it. And it's very clear. And so you just making sure that you are agile and that you are paying attention.
And I remember you shared something around that. I think it's the 8 o'clock meeting.
That's right.
And someone refusing to do the 8 o'clock meeting, and it's like, it was very much like, well, look, prepare to put a shift in, prepare to work hard, but the line's got to be drawn somewhere. And I think that is a difference between the generations, is that maybe older generations are prepared to do that, whereas in this instance, no, absolutely weren't.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that video specifically, right? It was a young man who was saying, I can't make an 8 a.m. meeting, I can't lead it because I have a class. And I come from an older millennial generation, so at first I was like, dude, go to the meeting, it's 8 o'clock. But as I listened to his reasoning, I started to think about it differently. Like, oh yeah, like he's contractually obligated to work for the company from 9 to 5. And the way that the company gets him to work outside of those hours is they promise a promotion, or they let him know that you've shown that you've proven yourself to climb the ladder. And he doesn't care about any of that. So he sets this hard boundary. I can't come in before 9. I'm sorry. It's not in my contract. And he's not alone, right? 46% of employees, younger workers, are working to their contractual obligations only, which means they are not going above and beyond. They are not taking extra hours. They're not working overtime. It's because they are prioritizing their work when it's time to work, and they're prioritizing their life when it's time to live. So there's a lot of stories like that are changing our perspectives. I actually posted one today of a gentleman who says he wants to descend the corporate ladder because he jokingly says, why would I take more money and more stress that I would have to pay to my therapist in order to, kind of deal with the stress of work? The time and effort and money doesn't add up. The juice isn't worth the squeeze for them. And so hearing that and finding other ways to incentivize them or building work in a different way is kind of the crux of what we're trying to share in our book.
Yeah, Josh, look, absolutely spot on as always, mate. And what the question that comes to my mind is Connor actually, given this thing about setting boundaries, one can think, well, actually, Gen Z are less committed to an organisation and their career. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think the amount of hours you work equates to how committed you are to something. Actually, I think there's probably a dated misconception that we think that the more hours you work, the more committed you are, the more you're going to deliver. When actually, just because you work for longer doesn't necessarily mean you're delivering great work all the time. I know I've spent time sat at my computer trying to finish a task and actually just wasted hours because I've not been able to see past something, or I've struggled in certain areas. And actually, the best thing to do was probably do the sensible thing and remove myself for a day, for an evening, for a night, and come back to it with fresh eyes the next day, or whenever that might be. So I think it's really important that employers don't see that kind of hustle culture stuff that we have typically seen on social media as being the way they expect their Gen Z employees to work, 'cause it's just not the case.
Actually, you could argue that things like not having a meeting on a Monday. I don't do meetings on Monday. Actually, is a very productive way of doing it, being more intentional with your time, and actually being more productive. And I mean, God, let's not go down the whole thing around productivity, but productivity is often misconstrued as how much work you can get done, where actually it's about the quality of work you get done. So those boundaries seem, particularly relevant. But Josh, any other thoughts? I mean, from when you were writing the book, or anything that stands out when you're creating your content for TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn, in terms of how serious employers need to take things to make sure that they're actually not facing a future where employment is dead.
Well, yeah, and obviously there will be some form of employment for sure. It's just talking about what jobs people want to take and how they go about taking them. I mean, and I kind of want to dig into that a little bit, kind of what you were talking about, Chris and Conor, especially as it relates to students coming out of university, right? They made a decision to go to school. They made a decision, whether it was pushed by their parents or by society, to take on large amounts of loans in order to go to school. And they were told, if you work really hard and get good grades, you will get a job. And it's just not the case. 56% of students right now are working high school level jobs, meaning they could have saved all of that debt and saved not going to school just to make the same amount. And so the job market in 2024 is absolutely insane. Like, if you are trying to find a job right now, you know that it's a 3.4% application to interview ratio, which means, 5 or 6 years ago, you would submit 200 to 300 resumes, you'd get 10 interviews, and you'd land a job within 6 weeks. Now you have to put in 800 to 1,000 resumes, and most of them are perfect because they're used AI to match the job description. And so you're seeing, just to get an interview. And so you see kind of this I hate this term, is the over education, but it's really just an oversaturation of qualified individuals who are fighting for a limited amount of jobs. And so if I am 18 years old and I'm looking at college, and I'm looking at my older sibling or someone I know in my life who's like struggling to find a job right now, who's got a lot of debt, who is never going to move out of mom and dad's basement because, rent is so high, you start to question the dream, right? You start to say, maybe I was lied to. And so I'm just saying that, like, when you get on TikTok and you actually listen to the younger generation and their excuses for not going to college or their excuses for not joining corporate America, it's because a lot of those promises don't hold true anymore. And that's an important note for, say these boomer leaders who are, they've done it this way. It's worked well for them. They are successful. Like, the economy is just fine for them, kind of in this bifurcated economy we're in. And so it's hard for them to even see the challenges. And when they give you advice like, hey, you got to work harder, you got to do this. Or I think you see this a lot, just jokingly, like my dad told me, walk right into the office, give a firm handshake, and you'll get a job. It's just not the case, not even close anymore. And so just, again, food for thought as we are looking to hire the younger generation. I think an interesting trend that we're seeing is that leaders are seeing Gen Z as a problem. We're seeing them as lazy, or they push back, or they're just not compliant. And so a lot of companies are defaulting to hire millennials over Gen Z because they don't want to deal with it. And I think that we're going to continue to see this fracture, which honestly is, we don't know what the repercussions are going to be, but it's big and it's coming.
It's only kicking the problem down the road, isn't it? Ultimately, it's very, very short-sighted way of doing it. It's actually, Conor, from your experience, because you're running a business, but you not that far away from having gone through that situation of leaving education. What route do I take? What's your thoughts on that?
I think, well, looking at my experience, I was probably one of the final years when I left school in 2017 who was pushed down the university pathway very much so. I think sort of 2018, 2019, 2020 going into COVID, schools got better at careers education. They're still not great in the UK, but they're getting better at that. There's more than just university. So my sort of knowledge of the world of work was probably quite blinkered, actually, other than, this is your pathway, it's university, my school forced me to do my university applications and so on. So I kind of had to forge my own path, in all honesty, in terms of the route I had taken. But I'm not surprised some of the things you're mentioning there about, employers looking at, that Josh mentioning, employers looking at millennials and so on. I even consider, a lot of my friends who did go down the university route, a lot of them are in jobs they could have definitely done if they just left school, even though they've got a degree. And a lot of them are in the dogfight for jobs, and a lot of them are struggling to find roles, either roles at a higher sort of pay grade or a higher level of experience based on their degrees, etc. And a lot of them are just getting no response. And that 2-3% of applications going to interview is 100% correlating with other Gen Zers like me, who have got degrees or not got degrees, just struggling to get response and seeing millennials walk straight through the door. So I do think that that is an issue that we're facing.
I think there's a big element of give and get here, isn't there? Because if employers in organisations are actually more prepared to do more than just sling job ads at people, and actually go, look, let's, despite the experiences that previous generations had, where you just applied for a job and you got on with it, we want people to understand what they're capable of doing and where their fit is with the right sector and the right organisation. So surely there is a big element of give and get here, isn't there? Where actually if employers put more of the effort up front, and actually by doing so, distinguishing their promotion, their content to other employers, then they're going to get more informed people applying, spending the right amount of time on the right applications, which means actually that's great for the organisation because they're assessing the right volume of applications because they're quality applications. And they're getting more of the right people into the organisation. And there's that element of reverse mentoring where actually by doing that, you then learn a lot from the people that you're trying to attract into the organisation.
And I think that's the thing you mentioned there around the content, the messaging that organisations are putting out actually correlates with what Josh was saying about that 2-3% of applications actually going through to interview, because there will be a large volume of applications for roles that are applying without actually the right knowledge, the right know-how, and the right awareness of the organisation. So in turn, are probably applying for jobs that aren't right for them. So, 50% of the applications automatically go into the virtual bin, so to speak, because actually if they'd have, pivoted their content, pivoted that strategy from the start for attracting the right people and giving the right message off, that will hopefully improve the candidate journey because you'll get a higher response rate, but also improve the organisation recruiting's time, because they're not having to sift through piles and piles of applications and profiles of people that actually aren't right for the role, full stop.
And Josh, employee engagement often is, seen as being employee engagement and culture seen as being fluffy, not very commercially focused. But what's your view on that? Is it that, or is it actually like properly bottom line, commercially the right thing to do to make sure you're engaging employees in the right way?
Yeah, it's a great question. Everything that we talk about and everything that we drive forwards in the Work3 Institute is all around that employee engagement. And actually, I hate that term because it's so antiquated. It's almost like, how can we trick our people into spending more time working for us and being productive, which isn't the question we should be asking. A happy employee is a productive employee, sure, but what do we need to do to make sure that they feel purpose and autonomy in their work? And so to answer the question directly, absolutely, there is a bottom line effect here. So if you look at it, right, Gallup just put out a poll that says 79% of employees are either actively disengaged or not engaged. And according to Achievers, that's 34% of an employee's annual survey, which is costing the global workforce $7.8 trillion in lost productivity. That's so much money, it's hard to put a number to it. But if we do some simple math, right, just take a look at how many people you have in your workforce and just say, for argument's sake, that 79% of them are disengaged. Then just calculate 34% of their salary, annual salary, and that's the millions and millions of dollars that you are losing out on every single year because your people are not engaged. And so to me, it's everything. And again, we're not asking how do we get our people engaged, or even how do we design experiences that our employees will love. I think we need to take it even a step further and say, what do we need to do to help employees feel fulfilled in their day-to-day work lives? And so we actually have this thing called the productivity fulfillment matrix, where we track how productive and how fulfilled employees are. And we have kind of this matrix where those who are fulfilled and happy are, overachievers, and then you have like happy non-contributors, you have psychological survivalists. We kind of go through this whole thing, but the idea is to show you not just that there's a disengaged workforce that's doing the bare minimum at this point, but like there's so much room to grow if we just cared enough to listen to our people, to implement these strategies, and to make sure that they're doing the work that fulfills them. And I will just say this. I spend a lot of time speaking on this. I get in front of my audiences, usually they're HR audiences, and I say, I'm going to put up the 10 operating principles of Work3. And I'm going to ask, can you give this to your employees? And a lot of it is like flexibility. Can you give them flexibility to work from home? If the answer is yes, keep going. If the answer is no, then why should they work for you? It's not their problem. It's your problem. You need to figure out how to engage them in ways that they want. And to be truthful, they want flexibility. They want autonomy. They want decision-making power. They want ownership over the projects that they're doing. They want a piece of the pie. And so, I just think that traditional employment cannot offer any of those things. And so it's a whole generation saying, see ya, we're going to go find another way. And they're finding it, right? We don't even have time to talk about what is a DAO, or a decentralized autonomous organization. What is a smart contract, and how can it supercharge the gig economy to where now I'm just a freelancer who opens up an app, and without all of the terribleness of trying to find clients and giving a large fee to Upwork, it's all decentralized. And now I get 100% of what I'm working on. I get to work on projects that I'm passionate about. AI matches my skills with projects, so I don't have to do all the heavy lifting and all of the sales. And so, like, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds way better than sitting at a desk from 9 to 5 trying to make it work for me. It just isn't working anymore. And if corporations can't do that, they risk obsolescence.
And also corporations, actually, I think when they really think about it, realize that what you just talked about is great for them as well. Because actually they are using the right people at the right time. There is more flexibility, which is more suitable to a world that is changing constantly. Whereas the model that is typically used in terms of employment is, and now I'm diving into your area of specialism here, Josh, but humour me for a little bit, is actually there are rigid structures in the world of employment where it is you have someone who's part-time or full-time, and you use them whether there's anything for them to do or not. The amount of productivity or enjoyment lost by someone who's just in a full-time job or a part-time job contracted to just deliver the hours, when they're actually not really thinking about what they can contribute to the organization and contribute to their own happiness as an employee, as a human.
Yeah, love it. I absolutely love it. And I just think that there are things that we can be doing today and we should be doing, right? I think that's the big thing that you're getting at here, Chris, is like, what do we do with this information? How do we move forward? And there's so many different ways. Again, like I said, at the Work3 Institute, we have a range, right? Sometimes we're working with decentralized Web3 startups who are bought in, ready to go, and we're just building a DAO, and we are doing some of this Web3 work. However, I think the majority of the work that we do and what we're passionate about is helping that digital-first, human-centric CHRO recognize the steps that they can take to build a better work today for their people. And it doesn't take a lot. I hope it's been clear that I've said a lot on this podcast so far. Listen to your people. Just listen to them. That can be in the form of a regular one-on-one. That can be an employee engagement survey. That could be getting on TikTok and not stalking them directly, but listening to their generation speak about work and what challenges they're facing. Also, it's important to stay informed on emerging trends, because how often do we hear about quiet quitting, quiet promoting, quiet firing, quiet everything, right? Quiet vacationing is the new favorite, where people are taking vacations without telling their boss. So understand the emerging trends and what they mean for your workforce specifically. And then tap into the workers' rhythms, individualize their work schedules. Like, I know that you guys love return to the office, and that's just a mandate that we have to do, but it's not working for the majority of employees. And when the power dynamics swing back to an employee market, Great Resignation 2.0 doesn't even start to describe it. It's going to be a mass exodus, and it's not going to be jumping from job to job. It's going to be jumping from employment to crypto networks in the metaverse. So lots to think about.